Hello, BookTube. It's late Sunday morning here in the UK. Sounds like it's a bit wet outside, probably a drizzle. As I say, it's late morning. It's crawling its way into the afternoon, early afternoon now. I thought I'd make a small video on actually two books, but first of all, I just want to again thank everybody, new subscribers, and all the wonderful comments. I'm glad the videos have hit a chord with a few people, and that's great. It's always nice to find something that you weren't aware of, and that's what I love. One of the things I love about BookTube, I'm always learning something, new books, either brand new books, especially Steve Donahue, with his mail hauls, opening mail. It's always nice to see what's coming up on the publishing market, but also old books, which I cater to more than new ones, but occasionally I do buy new ones. But yeah, there's two books here. They're basically very nice editions. It's Balzac's droll stories, nice decorated cloth cover and spine. The back is very plain. Go into more detail in a moment. And then Don Quixote. It's decorative as well on the spine and a bit of decoration on the back cover. Now we'll start with Don Quixote here. I've not read actually Don Quixote. It's something that I still want to read. This one here is translated by Charles Jarvis, and there are it says 700 illustrations by Tony Johannot. Now there's a little frontispiece and the title page. There is no date on the book itself. It says Beaton's Boys' Own Library, which I had not come across before. So to me it sounded like a series. But it was published in London, Ward, Lock and Tyler, Warwick House, Paternoster Row. So I went online when I got this about a year ago to do a little bit of research for it, just curious about the date and this Beaton's Boys' Own Library. The Beaton's Boys' Own Library, there's a few titles that pop up for sale by other booksellers. The date for this one varies, which is a bit funny because it varies anywhere from 1850 to 1910, I believe. But the evidence is pretty well all on this title page to get a more accurate date. So then I dug into my own books, looking for Wardlock, because I know mostly Wardlock and Company. But as with most 19th century publishers, they'd start out with a name, somebody else would come into the business, they'd add their name to it, then maybe somebody else would come, they'd add their name, somebody would leave, die, or they'd sell it off to another publisher, and they would incorporate that into the new one, or they'd buy another publisher and incorporate it into their own. So the name was always changing, but there are obviously time periods when it's going to be X, Y, and Z title, name of the publisher. This is Ward, Lock, and Tyler. So that narrows it down quite close to 1865 to 1873. When Tyler came into the business. He left in 73. Also, they had their businesses in different areas, and this is Paternoster Row. So, also too, the Beaton's Boys' Own Library, I believe, came out after the Beaton's Christmas Annual in 1865, or was it 64? 65, I think it was, with the first Sherlock Holmes story. And then this was done. The Wardlock and Tyler, Wardlock and Company, were not high-end publishers. You can see from the quality or lack of quality of this publication and the binding. It's still better than most 99% of books being printed today. It's still sewing, but you do see telltale signs that it's a little. They're bargain books basically, but still nicely made. But you can see a shadow there, and that's it's basically it's a shadow from the ink on this page. But then sometimes, well, actually, no, it's not. It's not a shadow from that. It's the bleeding from this side, from the etching on that side, and that wouldn't have happened with better paper, thicker paper. But the binding's a bit loose. It just the cloth seems a bit thin in comparison to other publishers, but obviously if they're selling this for a cheaper price for I don't know if there's a price on this. Sometimes they give prices. No, there's no price on this one. But let's say, for instance, it was 3 shillings for a nicely bound, solid, high-end publication. This would be like 1 shilling. 20 pence or something like that, or 10 pence. It'll be something like that where it's cheaper. But it is nice though. As I say, I picked it up because it is a beautiful book, and I haven't read it. Whether or not this translation is going to be the one for me, I won't know until I start. But it's full of these little etchings. As I say, it's showing there's over 700, so I can just open it randomly anywhere, and there are etchings all the way throughout. It doesn't matter what page, there are etchings. Obviously some bigger, and then spot illustrations for that. But even so, it's a nice. It says nearly 700. So sorry, I was wrong. I said 700 plus, but nearly 700 illustrations. It's got a bit of wear. Boards are showing a bit on the corner, but it's still a very nice copy. It needs some cleaning. But yeah, it's just it goes back to, and a lot of publications never had dates in them, so it's a bit of a guessing game to find out. Sometimes you can guess roughly by the type of binding it is, because through periods there were specific types of bindings that were popular, and if it was a popular press, they would most likely go with the trend. But in this case, as I say, you can narrow it down. Because, as I say, 1865 to 1873 was when Tyler joined the company, and then in 1865, and then left in 1873. So that's pretty simple to diagnose the age of it, and not a specific. Obviously, you would have to do a lot more work for that, but that's just it gives a ballpark figure, but better than on the booksellers. They say anywhere. I say, like, I think it was 1850 to 1910, and it was every year almost in between. So you can't always believe what you read. Now, this is a more higher end publication, the Droll Stories by Balzac, and this is just beautiful. You can tell by the feel of it too that it's much it's better made than the Don Quixote. There's more heft to it. The pages are thicker. The paper feels a lot better. This one it's translated into English, complete and unabridged, it says, but it does not give the translator's name. There's a preface by the translator, but he just says London, January 1874 dates. He does not give his name in the preface, which is too bad. But it's illustrated with 425 designs by Gustave Doré. And that's on the cover here as well, with the gold inlay. And there's the frontispiece and the title page. It does not have a little tissue in there, but it wasn't a colored, nothing special, so I think that is fine. I don't think it's been torn out. Again, there's no date to this. But I believe it is a first edition of this publication by John Camden Houghton, 74 and 75 Piccadilly in London. I think it is 1874, the date of the translation. And Balzac is one of my favorite writers. His Comedy Humane. I haven't read a fraction of them, to be honest, because I've gone through most of the Penguin translations. I do want to get a complete set of the Comedy Humane, but that runs into like 50 some volumes, and I have yet to find one that's commensurate to the price I want to pay. Now, I've not read actually droll stories for a long time. So, but because this says it is the first English translation, I find that of interest. It's like Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. I have a bit of a project that I might attempt someday. I think there's about 6 or 7 English translations there's been. The very first translation was by an American, and then it was shortly done in the UK here too. I have a rebound 3/4 leather of the second edition of the first English translation that was done in England here, and then I've actually got every other translation in a book form, bar one. There's one that I have on a PDF because I have yet to find it in book form, and the thought was to go through and compare the translations, read snippets, paragraph each, and just see how different they are and how the language has changed. Penguin came out with I think the newest one was a few years ago. There was a new translation. I have not read that one. The one that I read and love is from 1974-75 that first came out in folio, and then Penguin picked it up. And it's the one that I've read several times and love. But anyway, getting off of this, but it's just got to do with the translation. So, but I do like the idea that this is the first translation. I can't read French, so I'm left with the dregs of reading the translation. But it's still interesting to see how each translator deals with it differently. Steve Donahue was talking about that with the Greek, the Latin classics there of finding a translation, and that's what made me think of this again. And I might someday go through that. As I say, go through Les Miserables. It's a big project to do that because you're basically reading it 5-6 times through, and then actually thinking and comparing everything. So it's a big undertaking. But yeah, I thought I'd show these two beautiful books. I'll show you some illustrations. These are also better too, better etchings. Obviously, it's Doré, so they're going to be better. And there's like I say, 425, and some of them are just magnificent. It's all the way throughout. Full page ones as well as spot illustrations. I'm not, as I said in the previous video, I'm not 100% sure how I'll take the direction of my channel here. I think I'll just see how it goes, but it does seem that the books about books, as I say, there's 2 bookcases here, and I keep pointing to those, but yeah, there's 2 bookcases of books about books, so I can highlight a book or two once or twice a week maybe, and just give a brief summary of it. There's been a bit of mention regarding silent film, because I've mentioned that a few times throughout, and in my top 10 nonfiction books, I mentioned Kevin Braunlau's The Parade's Gone By. It's up there on the shelf, and he did a 13-part documentary that's the history of American silent film. Now, that I have on a playlist on my channel here. You can go and watch all 13 episodes. It's somebody else's uploads, but I've done it as a playlist. There's another playlist which I started, is Steve Donahue's Penguin books, is March of the Penguins, that he's going through, and I add to it every time he does one, and they're great. I've read, well, I haven't read the newer ones that have come out, but I read every Penguin Greek and Roman translation, or the ones they published up to about maybe 25 years ago, and anything since then. No, I haven't. I haven't really touched those. But it's a nice refresher for me, and also learning all sorts of new stuff, because I wasn't aware of other points of translation at the time. I just enjoyed reading them. But yeah, I just, with other books that I have here, this year Cabinet is full of P.G. Wodehouse. It's all the Everyman library Wodehouse. I think there's 98 volumes, I think. They are very nice, well-made hardcovers on acid-free paper. They're cloth-bound. They're sewn. They have nice dust jacket illustrations. Just one very minor quibble that I have with them is that the boards, the covers, are a little thinner than I would have liked to have had them. But again, they weren't that expensive. They were just a fraction over the cost of a paperback. But yeah, so I once I found that out, that they did that, and it was just, I think about the same time as I came to England, I just gobbled these up, and I just knew that was going to be my Wodehouse collection. And I had previous ones. I had the old Jenkins hardcovers, as well as the Penguin paperbacks, and I read those, but I didn't really have any here in the UK, so that is going to be my collection. And as you see here behind me is the Oxford Dictionary of National Biography. It's 60 volumes. I use that quite often. I've got, like I say, other collections across from me. Here is a little bit of science, some architecture, buildings. I've got 3 bookcases of essays of various times, and a lot of those sort of merge into the books about books, because they are book reviews, some of them, but I keep those into the essay part. And in another room here, I've got 2 bookcases of London and British history, smattering of other history. I've got like 4 or 5 bookcases of poetry, and I say 4 or 5 because they're all stacked up. I'm running out of space. A little bit of fiction. It's mostly literature, mostly paperback. Also, I got on the top here of these, which you can't see, is African history. It's been a big interest of mine, exploration. So I've got about 6 shelves, 5-6 shelves of African history, and then my film books, which I have 2 bookcases for, and I also have like other minor little collections. I was able to get a huge amount of the Everyman library, the original ones, the Everyman library. I envisioned at the beginning, because the look of the ones that I originally got were beautiful. They were almost pristine, some with dust jackets. So I said, yes, I'll take the lot. It turned out that they weren't as good a condition in the end, but I have about 750 approximately of the total 1,000 that Everyman put out. But it was amazing to go through these, clean them up a little bit, because there were many Everyman editions that I'd never ever seen before. I'd never seen this many in one place. Some of them have dust jackets. Jason Harrigan had one there with a nice old dust jacket on, and you rarely see those dust jackets, especially in that condition. So that might be something that I'll go through, a little bit of history of the Everyman library, just a brief. I mean, it would have to be probably a couple episodes or a couple videos, but there's no way I'm going to show every single book. That would take forever, 750, and some of them are falling apart. As I say, the spines are coming off, everywhere from pretty pristine, almost pristine, to rough. But I could go through and show the different bindings through the period and the different artwork that was used on the end papers, as well as the different types of dust jackets for the different periods, and then I have a little bit of other ephemera that's associated with Everyman, and also I have a Batsford collection. It's not massive. I collect them. I love the artwork on them, and there's different artists that have done this. I've got maybe 50 Batsfords that are with nice dust jackets. But anyway, I think I'll leave it there. If any of that stuff sounds interesting, then do mention in the comments, and I'll see what I can do over time. As I've said a number of times, I am off work at the moment, but I go back on Wednesday, so my time will be a little more limited. But I still hope to do 2-3 videos per week. Anyway, I don't think you'll see me back today, at least as far as I know. So have a good rest of your weekend, and I will talk to you later, BookTube. Bye-bye.